kaya? Bakit ka ba naghihintay? Nahimukin pa, pilitin ka ng tadhana. Alam mo na kung bakit nagkakaganyan. Lumulutang, nasasayang ang buhay mo at ang ibinubulong ng iyong puso.
My name is Wawel Mercado and I'm 43 years old. I actually thought of becoming a priest before, and I went to a retreat given by a very wise Jesuit, and he told me that if you want to have a kid, if you want to have a wife, if you want to have children, if you want to have a family, go for it, because that's most likely what God wants. I first met my wife at the office. When I first met Mila at the office, kasi she was very, she was very pretty, very striking, the way she appeared. Eh ako, parang I didn't want to show na, because everybody else thought she was pretty, but I didn't want to show that I was attracted to her that way. And parang to me, I found it difficult admitting that, that she was very pretty. But what really got me attracted and interested was when the entire division went out as a group. And when we did, we went to this bar that was quite noisy. And then what I noticed is that in the midst of all that noise, she spoke to the person in front of her using sign language. And I was, I became very curious how she knew sign. I asked her. And she said that she had a niece who was deaf-mute. Because she wanted to reach out to her niece, she had learned how to sign. So I was very impressed, the fact na she knew how to sign. And I said, wow, it's a pretty girl with a big heart. We became very close as friends, no? Parang I didn't start out parang courting her from the get-go. We knew each other for about 4 years before we finally decided to get married. Mary's life was very smooth, trouble-free. Rough spots, I think, were addressed, were ironed out, were discussed. During those 10 months, wala kaming pinag-awayan. No big arguments. Walang tampuhan. She got pregnant after our honeymoon, and then after 10 months, she gave birth to our daughter, to our first child. So we got married January 2, 1996, and then she gave birth October 20. A few minutes after she gave birth, she had an amniotic fluid embolism. At the time it happened, they didn't know what it was, but essentially what happened was she had a seizure. She went into arrest, and she was bleeding profusely. The hospital went into code blue. Code blue means a patient has died. Code blue means they try to revive a patient who is essentially clinically dead. They resuscitated her. So once she started breathing, they had to look for the source of bleeding. They stopped it, and she fell into a coma. The neurologist took tests, and it was confirmed that her brain activity was very low. So after 2 weeks, she was still in a coma. And that's when the neurologist told me that most likely she will be in a persistent vegetative state all the rest of her life. He also explained to me that because she is young, she will also most likely live as long as probably her mom. That I'll have to take care of her for that long. At that time, her mom was 70. So I said, oh my, parang the prospect of her living until 70 years old and in a persistent vegetative state, syempre I couldn't deal with it. I didn't know how I could possibly take care of her as a vegetable. On the third week of her coma, I noticed that when I would speak on the phone, her head would turn towards the phone. We would talk about things that were funny. She would laugh. I mean, Mila would laugh. The doctor said, oh, let's test that. When he visited her, propped her up, tapos gave her a teaspoon of water. And she sipped it. And then the doctor said she's awake. 44 days after her giving birth, I took her home to this house. It was hard because I brought her home in an ambulance. And she came in a stretcher. And parang, at the time, I was hoping na we'd go home like a normal couple. With a baby. Happy with a baby. But what had happened was that I had to bring home my daughter, of course, ahead of her. Tapos, she had to be brought in here in a stretcher. And I remember, and the maids came out, parang they started wailing kasi they could hardly recognize her. So, we set up a room here, like a hospital room. Yun, I proceeded to trying to get her rehab, trying to get her better.
Can you find me in this world I've chosen and never let me go? And hold me and mold me. And if there's no other way to make me whole, then go ahead and break me, then remake me. Holding on, I won't give up, 'cause I know you won't give up on me.
The first year of a brain injury is very critical. That you have to be very aggressive in rehab on the first year. So we did everything. I didn't stop at 1 year. Parang I did it for about 4 years. So she had all kinds of therapy. I would even bring her to the divine healers, but it wasn't very successful. When I brought Mila home, she could not see. She could not recognize her name. She was catatonic. But in the course of the year, she started to recognize her name. She started to understand conversations. And she started to track with her eyes whenever there was somebody in her room. She learned how to eat again. And that was a big thing. In that sense, she improved. Pero beyond that, she wasn't able to recover other things. Like, she never learned how to speak again. We also couldn't get her to read. And then she can no longer use her hands, her arms, her legs. They're all paralyzed. For my daughter Therese, I'm mother and father at the same time. I had to change jobs to be able to spend more time with Mila and be more available to Therese. From an early age, I tried to explain to Therese that her mother has had a brain injury. When she was in preschool, we would attend parent-teacher conferences, and I would be with Mila. I would bring Mila. So her classmates would see her mother. So they would see that her mother was different, had different needs. There are moments when Therese would be I guess, hesitant to be seen in public with her mother at those times when I am not accompanying them. She says that when people stare at her mom, she gets angry or she gets uncomfortable, and she just doesn't know how to handle situations like that. At the beginning, I wanted Mila to get well. Basically because I felt na, hey, look, I chose marriage. Therefore, parang, I guess my conversation to God at the time was that if I chose marriage, then give me a wife who is well. My marriage was nothing that I had ever imagined marriage to be. I wanted to have a wife whom I could share my life with, who could take care of me too. I know that continuing to think that way wouldn't be healthy. I had to make a decision na Mila is not gonna get well and that I'm gonna need to take care of her without expecting her to take care of me. It's more like parang the way a father relates to I was at a point kasi na either I put Mila in an institution for others to take care of her and then live a normal life. People may find it strange how I can relate to somebody who is being injured. But I do. Parang si Mila responds to me and I can see it. Si Mila, in the very little that she can do, can show me that she loves me. And I feel na the fact that she has overcome her brain injury just to try to express her love for me, parang how can I have the heart naman to leave her? For me naman, I have all my faculties with me. And if there's any difficulty presented by work, presented by friends, by situations, parang they're nothing compared to what Mila's going through. I've been living with Mila for 13 years and I don't think I'll ever leave her because, quite frankly, I love her very much. I am Wawel Mercado, and this is my story.